Hello, everybody. This is Susan Kokinda with your midweek update. Today is August 14th. Of course, on Monday night, Donald Trump and Elon Musk did break the internet. Since a substantial portion of the world's population apparently has watched all or some of the interview, it's a little redundant to comment on the content of it. But what I'm going to do today is focus on the historical process that interview is a part of and how it has the potential to upend over 50 years of planning by the global elite, whose intention has always been to destroy the existence of sovereign nations with our American republic at the forefront. Understanding what weapons the enemy uses and how we defeat them has been the focus and the passion of our organization for all of those years. And I want to encourage you to subscribe to Promethean Action's newsletter and to support our efforts. 50 years ago last week, Richard Nixon resigned from the presidency in what was really the first successful psychological warfare operation run against an American president and the American people in the post-war period. Of course, the elites had eliminated a president in a more brutal way just 11 years before with the assassination of John Kennedy. The resignation of Nixon was a political coup against a president who challenged the globalist perpetual war plans and threatened them in other ways. With no real alternative sources of information outside of the mainstream media, the American people, by and large, fell for the narrative about Tricky Dick and supported or simply went along with that coup. Our fledgling organization and news service back then fought against it, exposing it as a CIA-run operation, which Roger Stone continues to do, and identifying it as an attack on the institution of the U.S. presidency. Our voice was so unique in Washington, D.C., and our intelligence was so good that we found ourselves called upon to share our assessment with top people in the White House, in the Congress, and even in the Pentagon. As our intelligence sharpened over the years, our focus was more and more on the mother of the operation, namely the British Empire. In a post on Promethean Action by Bruce Director, we show that it is indeed the British who are the captains of this drive to full-fledged fascism. Bruce reports that the British Prime Minister and the head of London's Metropolitan Police have threatened to charge and extradite American citizens for propagating anything they consider to be misinformation and harmful. I think we fought something called the American Revolution over things like this. Elon Musk, of course, was especially targeted with an official letter from the EU warning him in the hours before the Trump interview. Those recent British actions simply take the mask off of the full-spectrum information warfare, which we've been experiencing in full force since Donald Trump announced for the presidency. But the elites have a growing problem. Each escalation carried out by the enemy since 2016 has shaken more people out of the grip of the Psy warriors and into a world where they can begin to think for themselves. And then came the attempted assassination against Donald Trump. That attempt and Trump's response was the tipping point for probably millions, including most prominently Elon Musk, who made clear in the interview that it was Trump's courage and leadership in Butler which propelled him to endorse Trump. I think it was very important that Musk opened the interview with Trump with an extensive back and forth on the assassination attempt. It's important because the masters of the narrative have essentially tried to erase it, both from their search engines and from any significant follow-up from their controlled media organs, which are instead running on overdrive, hyping the Kamala Harris Hollywood extravaganza campaign. But why do they want to erase the assassination attempt, even while they're busy trying to prevent any serious investigation of it? Because Musk's and many others' response to Trump's courage and leadership gives important insight into what it is that the British and today's globalists are afraid of. I'm going to take a quick look at two British figures from the 20th century, whose writings and deployments explicitly outlined the empire's mind assault on the American people. Back in the early 1930s, Lord Bertrand Russell, the man whom Lyndon LaRouche called the most evil man of the 20th century, which is saying a lot, wrote a book called The Scientific Outlook. In a chilling passage, he described how the ruling class would run their education system in order to keep the lower classes under control. They wanted to produce ordinary men and women who would be, quote, docile, industrious, punctual, thoughtless, and contented. Russell went on to say, all of the researches of psychoanalysis, behaviorism, and biochemistry will be brought into play. Does that sound like today's classrooms and today's woke culture? But Russell realized that it might not always work, and that sometimes, from among the non-ruling class, someone might emerge with an intellectual quality, as they say, equal to the rulers, and that person would either have to be co-opted or the rulers would have to, quote, send him to the lethal chamber before his ill-disciplined intelligence has had time to spread revolt. That's pretty blood-curdling, but it highlights their fear of Trump, Musk, J.D. Vance, Tucker Carlson, and others. It is the ill-disciplined intelligence, and I would add courage, of those from amongst the non-elite whose courage and leadership will break the brainwashing, will break the controlled environment which they have so carefully constructed over the decades. The man who gave our organization inspiration, namely Lyndon LaRouche, possessed precisely those kind of qualities as well. And this quality of leadership, in essence, gives you permission to think. You don't have to agree with everything that Trump or Musk says, but their leadership and courage allows you, as Musk said, to simply have a conversation, something which the British and the EU want to ban. So look at the past week, even before Trump and Musk blew up social media with more than a billion views. Donald Trump and J.D. Vance have been reaching out to younger viewers, going on various streaming platforms with people like Aiden Ross and the Nelk Boys. Trump gave an unscripted and extensive interview at Mar-a-Lago with the press, something which Kamala Harris simply can't do. Last Sunday, J.D. Vance did the rounds of the Sunday talking head shows. And even though this is pretty much enemy territory, Vance's articulate and no-holds-barred answers upend their entire game plan. So how is the ruling class responding? By doubling down on their full-spectrum information warfare. The polls bombard you with the Democratic Party's resurgence after the elites carried out their own regime change against Joe Biden. The mainstream media is unabashed in terms of its support for Harris and its trashing of Trump and Vance. Just look at how they took Trump and Musk's discussion about the physical after effects of the accident at Fukushima and the atomic bombing of Hiroshima. Namely, they talked about how the land is now habitable, to claim that Trump and Musk were okay with dropping atom bombs on Japan. And of course, next week we'll have the Democratic Convention. Hollywood director Steven Spielberg is on board to help shape the show. So you can pick your favorite Spielberg production, E.T., Close Encounters, Jaws, or even artificial intelligence, and come up with an appropriate image. And of course, the carefully scripted theme of the Democrats is Donald Trump's threat to democracy. When Harris and Waltz visited Detroit last week, the local black newspaper covered the event, and not too favorably, actually. But they had to include the following boilerplate message. They said about Harris and Waltz, they seem to be in about as strong of a position as possible to keep Trump from returning to the White House and enacting the terrifying Project 2025. A far-right plan to replace the government with a Christian nationalist autocracy. Now, we've extensively covered Trump's rejection of Project 2025, and we've contrasted his platform, which adamantly and explicitly calls for returning the Republican Party to its roots as the party of working people and manufacturing. But even Project 2025, with all of its Wall Street, old Republican Party-style crap, is nowhere near as terrifying as what Bertrand Russell and his British co-thinker Aldous Huxley crafted for the empire. Huxley, of course, is infamous as the author of Brave New World. He came to California in 1961 and gave a speech. And here's what he said. There will be, in the next generation or so, a pharmacological method of making people love their servitude and producing dictatorship without tears, so to speak. Producing a kind of painless concentration camp for entire societies, so that people will in fact have their liberties taken away from them, but will rather enjoy it, because they will be distracted from any desire to rebel by propaganda or brainwashing enhanced by pharmacological methods. And this seems to be the final revolution, Huxley concludes. California, especially Kamala Harris's Oakland, has become the proving ground for Huxley's program. Crime, drugs, homelessness, hopelessness. That is the future for the United States under a British-crafted Harris presidency. The other future is the one outlined in the Trump-authored platform, one which lifts people out of their despair and littleness and gives them a mission to build again. It shows them concrete policies through which they can create and raise families in a peaceful and productive society. In our organizing, we found that many Trump-Vance activists have not read the platform. But when they realize what is in it, it's like they found a lifeline, a lifeboat in the storm of Psy-Ops. So while Kamala waves her hands about stopping inflation and making things affordable, of course never mentioning that she's been part of an administration which has had 4 years to fix things and has made them immeasurably worse, Trump and Vance are putting forward real policies that will affect the real world, the most important of which are outlined in the 16-page platform and summarized by the 20 promises which preface the platform. If you haven't read it, read it. If you're not organizing with it, organize with it to get Donald Trump and J.D. Vance elected. That's how we will break decades of British-run psychological warfare. This has been your Midweek Update. Thanks for watching.
Please take a moment and subscribe to our free newsletter at prometheanaction.com.